After the rails of a roller coaster were destroyed while it was in operation, an inspector investigates the case of a mysterious man who modifies park rides in order to eliminate visitors. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Roller Coaster, from 1977. In a harbor near the amusement park called Ocean's View, a man prepares his equipment for fishing in the sea. However, instead of starting to fish, he pulls a pair of binoculars out of his bag and watches the roller coaster from afar. Shortly afterwards, the park goes into operation, with all the rides being activated and the first visitors arriving. However, one of the roller coaster mechanics turns out to be the same guy from the port, who places an explosive-like device in the middle of the tracks. When night falls, the park continues to operate and the man in the harbor is on site, watching everything. Finally, it's the train's turn to go down the roller coaster and travel all over the tracks, but even when it passes the explosive, nothing happens and everyone gets off safely. However, it's time for the next roller coaster ride and more people get on the train to start the race. Unfortunately for them, the guy at the port takes a detonator out of his jacket and activates it, causing a small explosion that lifts the rails of the ride. Because of this, when the trolleys pass through the damaged part of the route, they come off the rails and fall into the middle of the park's stalls. Everyone watches in horror as the serious accident leaves several of the passengers injured, while others are eliminated. Far away, a safety inspector named Harry Calder receives an urgent call from his boss, Mr. Davenport. He asks if the inspector has looked at Ocean's View Park and Harry confirms, saying that he had cleared the site 2 months ago. However, Mr. Davenport informs him that there has been a tragic accident on the roller coaster, with several injuries and fatalities. Harry doesn't believe this could have happened, but he goes to the park to investigate. There, he meets one of the employees, Benny, who was near the scene of the accident. Although traumatized by what happened, he says he saw the mechanic, called Wayne, inspecting the roller coaster just before the park opened. After hearing this, Harry goes to the site office and meets Wayne, the mechanic. The man says that he had inspected the tracks early in the morning and everything was in order, but this goes against the information given by Benny, so Harry suspects that the mechanic he saw was actually an imposter. The next day, the same guy who caused the roller coaster incident goes to another amusement park and causes a fire. Meanwhile, Harry goes for a ride with his girlfriend, Fran, and their daughter, Tracy, and goes to a pet store to buy the girl a hamster. While his daughter is choosing one of them, Harry sees a piece of newspaper in the cage, with the recent news of the fire in the park. He fears that there is a connection between this event and the accident in the previous park, but when he contacts the management, they won't give him any more details. Even so, Harry doesn't give up and, on his way back to work, he asks his secretary for information about the owner of the burned-out park. She discovers that the owner of both the park and Ocean's View are on a trip to Chicago and Harry decides to go there to get answers. In Chicago, the owner of one of the parks, Mr. Quinlan, tells the others that, after the incident, he received a mysterious cassette tape. He puts it in the cassette player for everyone to listen to, but at the same moment, room service comes to deliver breakfast. However, the hotel butler turns out to be the park's own criminal, who takes the opportunity and places a hidden bug in the lampshade. After he leaves, Harry arrives in the room and, even though he wasn't invited, he demands to take part in the meeting because he needs to know the truth about the accidents. Mr. Quinlan allows him to enter and then he plays the tape. On the audio, can be heard a message from the criminal, who admits that he provoked the 2 incidents in the parks to prove that he is a real threat. So, if they want to keep their establishments and fortunes, the guy demands a payment of $1 million, or more people will be eliminated. As well as sending this message, the villain observes everything through the window of the hotel opposite and hears the conversation thanks to the bug. With the message gone, the park owners think it's best to comply with the demands and avoid further damage. However, Harry proposes warning the federal authorities, because this is no ordinary criminal. The executives decide to follow his advice and report everything to the FBI, which sends one of its men, Agent Hoyt, to lead the investigation. On meeting him, Harry passes on all the information he has collected, including the tape recording. However, he is soon dismissed from the investigation, which from then on will be the sole responsibility of the FBI. Unhappy at being sidelined, Harry accepts the terms and asks his secretary to close his hotel account. Unbeknownst to him, the criminal from the park is also there and is discreetly watching him. Back at home, Harry receives a call from a mysterious man telling him to take a vacation in Virginia City. He is confused by this request and demands to know who it is, but the guy just hangs up on him. Seconds later, Agent Hoyt and his men go to Harry's house and tell him that the criminal wants to talk to him. Not only that, but he wants Harry to personally deliver the sum of $1 million to another park in Virginia City. Harry soon deduces that the caller was the criminal himself and Agent Hoyt demands that he accompany them to deliver the money. With no other choice, he accepts and receives a plane ticket to Virginia, but as soon as Agent Hoyt leaves, Harry receives another call. The criminal says he got him involved because Harry was the only one who noticed how elaborate his plan was, and so he began to admire him. Finally, he warns that once the payment of $1 million has been made, no other park will be attacked. Harry, however, says that he will not collaborate with the guy's schemes and that he will soon be caught by the police. The criminal doesn't like this provocation and warns him that he'd better continue on to Virginia and wait for his next instructions. Harry obeys and later arrives in the city, where he meets the FBI team in the park indicated by the villain, the King's Dominion. In the park's office, Agent Hoyt passes on the plan to everyone. Harry will have to walk around the rides, carrying a suitcase with the amount of money demanded by the criminal. However, at a certain point in the journey, the suitcase is exchanged for an empty one, just before it is handed over to the man. Finally, Agent Hoyt tells his assistant to put a bug on Harry, so that if anything goes wrong, all he has to do is communicate with the team. With everything planned, Harry is left next to a phone in the park, along with his suitcase and waiting for instructions. Surrounding him are plainclothes policemen in an undercover van, with the intelligence team monitoring the park, including Agent Hoyt. Now all that remains is for everyone to wait for the criminal to contact them, who has arranged for the money to be delivered at 11:30. As expected, as soon as the clock shows the time indicated, the phone next to Harry rings and the intelligence team starts tracing the call. On the other end of the line, the man speaks to Harry and asks him to go to the theater in the park, buy a hat from the store next door and wear it. Harry asks what he should do after that, but the man informs him that he will receive further instructions as soon as he removes the bug from his body. When he hears this, Harry tries to disguise it, but the guy soon proves that he is in control of the situation when he learns that the call is being traced. He soon informs him that there won't be time to trace the source of the call and even sends a message to Agent Hoyt, stating that there is an explosive in the park. The call ends and the FBI agents are unable to trace him and can't rely on the bug for information. Meanwhile, Harry obeys the villain's demands and, as well as throwing the bug in the trash, he goes to the store and buys a hat with his name embroidered on it. One of the plainclothes agents informs him that when the bags are replaced, Harry must remove his glasses. He discreetly agrees and waits for contact from the criminal, who appears at the top of a tower in the park and observes everything with his binoculars. Minutes later, a delivery man meets Harry and hands him a package. When he checks the contents of the box, he sees a message with instructions to go to a place called Vertigo and turn on the radio. Harry follows orders and finds the place called Vertigo, which is one of the park's revolving rides. He picks up the radio and contacts the villain, who demands that he get on the ride and enjoy the fun. Harry begrudgingly accepts and is forced to go on several of the park's rides. After Vertigo, he goes on a huge merry-go-round, the Ferris wheel and a subway, which passes through a huge zoo. Finally, it's time for the park's most beloved attraction, the roller coaster. Even aware of the risks, Harry once again follows the criminal's demands and gets on the ride, taking the first seat on one of the trains. Finally, the ride starts and all the passengers are excited about it, except Harry. Even so, the criminal seems to be enjoying the situation and orders Harry to get on the Ferris wheel once more. Once again, he goes through the toy's long route and sharp turns, until finally, the ride ends without further incident. After exiting the roller coaster, the next toy is a scale in a tent, where a young girl tries to guess the weight of the people who climb on it. As soon as Harry steps on the scales, his weight turns out to be higher than the young woman had guessed, but this is due to the heavy load in his suitcase. This proves to the villain that the suitcase is still full of money and that no exchange has taken place. Harry's journey through the park continues, and this time he has to go on a ride called the Skyride. The Skyride is a cable car that runs throughout the park and, as he is taken upwards on the cables, Harry receives yet another message from the criminal. The villain claims that the tour is almost over and says he's going to reveal the location of the explosive. Harry asks where the object is and, to his surprise, the explosive is inside his radio and was activated the moment he turned it on. The villain also warns him not to throw the radio out of the cabin, as the fall will activate the explosive and several people in the park will lose their lives. Harry must also not try to open the radio or leave it in the cabin, otherwise the deal will be broken and the explosive will be triggered. Finally, the villain demands that he make the gesture indicated by the agents to change the bags. With no other choice, when Harry gets off the ride, he removes his glasses and the gesture is captured by one of the park's undercover agents. He then warns Hoyt that, together with his team, he should run to the ride to check if the criminal is there. However, as soon as they arrive at the ride, they find two priests in the cabin, who had entered the ride just after him. In the end, the whole journey was just a setup by the criminal to divert the attention of the FBI team. Thanks to this, he contacts Harry one last time and tells him to leave the suitcase on a bench and not look back. As for the explosive, the villain simply says that Harry should take it to the police squad and then switches off his communicator. Unsure if he's really safe, Harry looks back and sees that the briefcase in the bench has already been removed, proving that everything went according to the criminal's plans. Minutes later, he returns to the park office and Agent Hoyt scolds him for not having tried to communicate with the agents in the park. Harry defends himself, saying that he was unprotected and incommunicado, but before the argument can continue, the special squad arrives on the scene. They manage to defuse the explosive, but it's impossible to trace, as everything was done amateurishly and with ordinary parts. With this failure in the mission, Harry is sent home, but before he goes, Agent Hoyt informs him that the money delivered was marked. Because of this, as soon as the criminal spends the money, he can be traced. However, Harry fears that this will have serious consequences, as the villain will soon discover the ruse. As he had feared, when he returns home and rests for the night, the criminal calls Harry again, saying that his conditions have not been met. He intends to respond accordingly and soon another park is attacked. Harry tries to talk him out of it, but the guy says he's no longer up for negotiations and tells Harry he won't be in touch. Desperate, the inspector calls the FBI agency and asks Agent Hoyt to meet him at his office. There, Harry tells Hoyt about his latest liaison with the villain and suspects that his next attack will be at the Magic Mountain Park. The reason for this is that the park will soon be opening the world's largest roller coaster and that Harry himself carried out the safety inspection. Now that he understands the mind of the crazy criminal, Harry believes that he will cause an incident on the roller coaster to prove his point. What's more, he deduces that, with this further incident, the guy wants to ruin his career as an inspector, because he thinks he knew about the marked notes. With everything exposed, he asks Agent Hoyt to send a team to guard the park and prevent another disaster from happening. Unfortunately, the agent refuses, as he can't move finances and an entire team, based solely on the assumption of a safety inspector. He then leaves the office, but asks Harry to tell him anything new he finds out. With no one to help him, Harry decides to go to the park on his own and tells his girlfriend that he's going to Magic Mountain on business. On the other end of the line, his daughter hears the conversation and asks her stepmother to take her to the park too. Meanwhile, Harry returns to his car, but Hoyt is waiting for him and tells him to come, because even without proof, he wants to catch the villain at any cost. Hours later, it's time for the roller coaster to open. Harry and the FBI team arrive at Magic Mountain an hour early and ask for all the files with the park's plans. Harry begins to analyze the documents and tries to think of how the villain will act in this situation. Agent Hoyt suggests an evacuation, but the park owner is against the idea, as he doesn't want to keep the site suspended indefinitely. They then decide to put undercover agents on the roller coaster and, to keep a low profile, the train and tracks will be decorated with tinsel and banners. The reason is to take advantage of the July 4th holiday and thus not arouse the criminal's suspicions. Everyone agrees with the plan and begins preparations to stop the crazy man on the roller coaster. Meanwhile, just as Harry predicted, he's at Magic Mountain, following the concert of a rock band invited to the roller coaster's premiere. What Harry didn't imagine was that Fran and Tracy would also be at the park, and now they too are potential victims of the criminal. The show continues and the undercover agents inspect the roller coaster, but there is no sign of any detonators or explosives on the ride. But after much searching, they finally find an explosive on the tracks and begin the procedure to deactivate it. With great care, the specialist removes the trap and takes out the screws so that he can check the internal wiring. Just then, the villain strolls through the park, until a family asks him to take a picture of them all together. The guy accepts and positions the camera, but he soon turns his gaze to the roller coaster and realizes that the mechanics have found his explosive. To keep up appearances, the villain takes the photo and returns it to the camera, but then pulls the detonator out of his jacket and prepares to set it off. Fortunately, just as he was about to press the button, the specialist cuts the correct wire and the explosive was disarmed. Thanks to the work of the agents, the danger has passed and the opening of the roller coaster can go ahead. As for the villain, he angrily notes that his plan has fallen through, but he still has a card up his sleeve and, on returning to his car, he begins to assemble a new device. Minutes later, the roller coaster finally debuts, with the mayor in attendance to inaugurate it. Agent Hoyt believes that the guy doesn't know that his trap has been disarmed and sends his men to keep a discreet watch on the park. The opening continues and the park workers inform him that only those with golden tickets will go on the opening ride. Upon hearing this, the villain rushes to buy one of the tickets from a young couple for $100 and finally manages to get on the ride. At the same time, Harry decides to leave the room for a while to visit the park and soon finds his girlfriend and daughter there. He tells them to go home because the place isn't safe and, Even though they don't know why he's worried, they agree to leave. After that, Harry continues to walk around the park, looking for any sign of the criminal in the surroundings. However, the villain is already in one of the carts, which begins the journey down the roller coaster. Without hesitation, he places the device in one of the wagons and the ride on the world's longest roller coaster begins. The ride goes off without a hitch and, after the long journey, everyone returns safe and sound to the starting point. The villain gets off the train, along with the other passengers, but leaves the device hidden in one of the seats. After the roller coaster ride, several reporters start interviewing the passengers to find out their opinions of the new ride. Among them, the man is also interviewed, but he just replies that the ride was good and leaves. However, Harry, who was nearby, hears his voice and recognizes it from the phone calls. He then runs towards the reporter and asks to hear the subject's voice on the recording, thus confirming that it was indeed the criminal. He runs after the guy and one of the undercover agents realizes that something is wrong and warns Agent Hoyt. Meanwhile, Harry continues to follow the suspect, even though he hasn't seen his face. After much searching, he finally finds the individual by recognizing the clothes he was wearing and, when the villain returns his gaze, he is finally certain that this is the man who caused all the eliminations in the parks. Shortly afterwards, one of Hoyt's agents appears to help Harry and he shows him who the criminal is and that he must have placed another explosion device on the ride. When he hears this, Hoyt tells everyone to stop the roller coaster, but it's too late and the cars begin to follow the long route. Even so, the agents gather in the park and manage to arrest the man, but he shows them the detonator and threatens to press the button. Harry knows he's telling the truth and tells the agents to put down their weapons, otherwise there will be more eliminations. However, the villain makes one more demand, ordering one of the policemen to hand over his gun and that Harry will be his shield until he manages to escape. Harry then takes the officer's gun and hesitates to hand it over, so the criminal threatens to blow up the roller coaster. However, Hoyt had asked one of his agents to try to find the frequency used to detonate the explosive and block it. The agent manages to do this, so Hoyt gets in touch again, ordering his men to finish off the criminal once and for all. Hearing the agent's order over the communicator, the villain presses the detonator, but to his misfortune, the frequency has been blocked. He then tries to take Harry's gun by force, but the man shoots him in the leg, forcing him to flee. He tries to escape down the roller coaster, with the FBI agents on his tail. The man manages to climb onto one of the rails, but Harry appears in front of him, gun in hand. The two of them face each other, but before the villain can try anything, the roller coaster train passes over the track where he is standing and pushes him away. Harry witnesses everything and sees that the villain has ended up being eliminated by the very ride he tried to destroy. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.